Welcome to Reaching Abundance. I'm Virginia Elder, your host. This is the podcast where you get weekly cliff notes on developing mental fortitude and podcast marketing strategies from top business owners. Ready to level up your show? Start by booking a call with me using the link in the episode description. Let's get into the episode. Welcome back to the show where we talk about growing your business through podcasting, without the fluff, without the hype, and with real actionable strategies that actually move the needle. Let's be real for a minute. If you've ever searched online for advice on podcasting, you've probably seen all the same hype type headlines. Podcasting is your secret weapon. Grow your business through podcasting. Or one I saw recently, beyond the microphone, elevate your authority and influence. That's all great, and I appreciate the excitement around the industry, but I know you're actually looking for the how to be successful, how to structure your episodes, how to batch record, how to make sure your show gets found, and especially how to turn your listeners into potential clients. If you've ever felt frustrated that all you're getting is a bunch of podcasting is amazing content, but not enough detail on the strategy, you're not alone. And that's exactly why we're having this conversation today. I don't need to convince you that podcasting is valuable. You already know that. You're sitting here listening to me. You're here because you're wondering how to make sure your podcast actually gets discovered by the right people, the people who could turn into clients for your business. That's what we're diving into today, podcast SEO. If you've ever wondered, how do I show up in search results? Or how do I make sure my podcast reaches the people who actually need me and are looking for me? Then you're in the right place. Here's why this is important. According to Edison Research, 74% of podcast listeners say they tune into podcasts to learn something new. That means your ideal clients, people actively looking for financial guidance, are out there searching for the kind of information you will be sharing. And here's something else to think about. A study by Backlinks found that 49% of podcast listeners discover new podcasts through online search, whether that's Google, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify. So, if your podcast isn't optimized to be found via search, you could be missing out on nearly half of your potential audience. That's what these statistics tell us. Here's how we're going to break it down. First, I'll explain what podcast SEO actually is and why it matters. Then we'll go over the key elements that impact how searchable your podcast is. And by the end of the episode, you'll have a clear, actionable plan for optimizing your podcast to attract the right audience. And of course, whether you're DIYing this or not, this information is going to be helpful. If you are having a podcast production company do your show, that's awesome. But it does still fall on the host or the creator of the content to look at what's being produced and for you to scrutinize that through the lens of what you know people are searching for and how they might find you. So let's get into it, because podcasting isn't just about recording great episodes. It's about making sure people can actually find them. So let's start with what the foundation of podcast SEO is. SEO stands for Search Engine Optimization. It's how content gets found online, whether it's a blog, a website, a podcast, any content online. Using SEO strategies is about making sure that when someone searches for a topic, your content appears in the results because the words that they typed in are also what you're using for your episode titles, your show notes, and your transcripts. Now, why does this matter? Because SEO is the number one driver of organic traffic online. A study by Bright Edge found that 53% of all website traffic comes from organic search, more than paid ads and social media combined. This also supports the murmur from clients, friends, business besties, most people around that, social media really isn't driving traffic to your business. But SEO probably is. For podcasts, the numbers tell the same story. A report from Demand Sage found that 30% of podcast listeners use Google search to find new shows, meaning if your podcast isn't optimized for search engines, you're missing a significant portion of potential listeners. So, of course, you're thinking, well, okay, but how do I optimize my show? Let's talk about the key elements of every episode. First, episode titles. This is your very first and greatest SEO opportunity. We're trying in every element to use words that people would type into a search engine, whether that be Safari, Google, their podcast app, YouTube, wherever they're searching, whatever phrases, words, questions, or even names, like it could be account type names, or it could be your name, or it could be a big name in your industry. Anywhere people are typing in these things, you want to be using any applicable words, phrases, questions, names in your content as well. So, episode titles. This is the first thing potential listeners and search engines see, and it's your first chance to rank for important keywords. If your title isn't clear, your episode is already at a disadvantage. Here are 3 tips on how to optimize your episode titles. 1, use clear, keyword-rich titles. Keywords are just simply those phrases that people are typing in. So you're thinking about what would someone search for? What is the phrasing they would use? What is the question they would ask? And that phrase, it could be up to 3 or 4 words, that is called a keyword. It's really a key phrase. So the first tip is here to use clear, keyword-rich titles. You're going to avoid catchy phrases like retirement readiness, and instead you're going to use something like, how much do you need to retire? How much do business owners need to retire? How much should I have in my 401k to retire? Those type of titles are actually questions that people are typing in and looking for answers to. All right, the second tip here, keep it under 60 characters. Apple Podcasts and others cut off the tail end of longer titles. So while you can have a long title, especially if it absolutely makes sense to do so, recognize that what someone may see on their phone is only going to be those first 60 characters. So make sure any kind of impactful key phrase or language or account type or anything specific is within the first 60 characters of your title. The third tip here is to prioritize clarity over creativity. Don't try to be clever. Try to show up in search, which means make your title to your episode clear as day as to what your episode or your blog or whatever content you're doing is about. Be straight to the point with your title. Be super clear. That's how you're going to show up. All right, so why does all this matter? According to a study by Backlinks, podcasts with keyword-rich titles rank 21.8% higher in search results than those with vague or non-descriptive titles. So before you hit publish, ask yourself, if I were my ideal listener, what would I type into the search bar to find this episode? That is what your title should reflect. All right, so level 2 SEO. Let's talk about your show notes, which are also your episode descriptions. Whether we're referencing podcasts specifically, like the podcast app, or we're talking YouTube, because so many people are putting their episodes on YouTube now. Whichever platform, you need a rich description, again, that's clear, that has keyword phrasing in it, and that is a strong and clear description of what the heck you talked about inside your episode. Most podcasters write show notes as an afterthought, which is a big mistake because show notes and podcast descriptions are actually prime real estate for search engines. Since Google and Apple Podcasts can't quite listen to your full episode yet, they rely on the text in your show notes to determine what your content is about. Now, of course, your show notes are second to the episode titles, which is why we already talked about that. So if your episode title is on point, the next thing, whether it's Google or a person, is going to look at is that episode description. So here are 3 tips to optimize those episode descriptions so that they're SEO friendly. Tip 1, use relevant keywords naturally. So instead of, in this episode, we discuss tax deductions, write, learn tax saving strategies for business owners, including SEP IRAs and Roth conversions. Do you see how clear and specific that sentence is? It's using relevant keywords. They're used naturally in a sentence you might actually say. And we deleted the whole phrase in this episode. That phrase is one of the most overused and unhelpful phrases in show notes descriptions across the board. Everywhere possible, try to delete useless phrases like in this episode or in today's interview or this quarter's theme is, anything like that. Go straight to the point and say, learn tax saving strategies for business owners, including SEP IRAs and Roth conversions. That is so much more useful. Which brings me to the second tip. Make it useful. Your show notes and episode descriptions should be useful. You should answer key questions that your listeners are thinking about. You should add timestamps for easy navigation and include key takeaways. If someone skims over your episode show notes and gets 0 value, we have a problem. Which brings me to the third tip. Think of your episode show notes like a blog post. The more detailed and useful those show notes are, the more valuable they are for SEO. You have up to 4,000 characters in Apple Podcasts, for example, to describe what you talked about inside your episode. So in the show notes box there, you can write up to 4,000 characters. Most shows do not take advantage of this absolutely free and helpful real estate. Most shows have like a 1 or 2 sentence description, maybe a paragraph and a couple timestamps or bullets if we're lucky, but nowhere near the potential 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 characters where someone would really truly take the time to describe what was in the episode, which would be most useful. So this matters because a study by Riverside FM, which is my preferred remote recording platform that I always recommend, found that podcasts with well-optimized show notes get 37% more downloads compared to those with vague or generic descriptions. So 37% more downloads. I think you want 37% more downloads, don't you? I do. So let's make it a point to describe our episodes well. Use most, if not all, of the allowed characters in our descriptions and show notes so that people can find us, get value out of those show notes. And so we're not just wasting this free real estate that's available. Think of your show notes as the SEO fuel for your podcast. A well-written description makes your episode more discoverable and more enticing for listeners to hit play. All right, the third tier to SEO, the SEO secret weapon, if you will, is your episode transcript. Here's something most podcasters don't realize. Google can't really listen to your podcast, but it can read through your transcript. This is why transcripts are one of the most underused yet most powerful SEO tools that you have. So within the past few years, I have seen an uptick in the use of transcripts for SEO, much of it in the name of accessibility. Here are 3 tips on how to use transcripts specifically for SEO. For one, post your transcript on your website. This gives Google more text to index, which makes your episode more searchable. There are concerns around this as far as aesthetics for your website. The best way I've found to use your transcript is on each episode's webpage. It goes up like a blog post, right? So you've got your episode title, your podcast embed, maybe an introductory paragraph, hopefully your YouTube embed somewhere in there, and the rest of your podcast show notes. So maybe that's the 4,000 characters that we talked about earlier. It's a well-structured, keyword-infused, really nicely organized description of what's inside the episode with timestamps, bullet points, places where I can find you and follow you and find your guest and buy their book and do all the things. And then below that, you have another subheading that would also describe your episode. So maybe like the second best episode title, and then your transcript below that. So the transcript is at the bottom of the screen. So it's not any of the first things that someone would see, but it is there. Google can read it. And you take the time to go through and space it out and make it look decent. Maybe you highlight each person's name in bold throughout the document. There are ways to make a transcript look visually appealing without it just being like a massive wall of text, because that is what we don't want. Tip number 2, don't spend your time transcribing the episode yourself, or even for a VA to do it. Use AI tools like Otter AI, Descript, Rev.com, or even Riverside FM has a transcript feature now, and allow those things to generate accurate transcripts for you automatically. If you're speaking technically inside your podcast, there is a chance that you need to go through your transcript and make sure that it picked up the correct words and maybe account types or specific instructions that you were talking about in your episode. Maybe you'll have to edit and fix someone's website or IG handle. Those are common places where I see AI transcripts make mistakes. But for the most part, you can use AI to generate your transcript and make life a lot easier for you. All right, and tip number 3, make sure your transcript includes your main keywords. In order for your transcript to include your main keywords, you would have needed to, on the front end, before you ever recorded your podcast, think about the subject matter, the key phrases people are typing in, and the questions your listeners have about this topic. Then, when you record, you're automatically going to be infusing that language into your episode, which then the transcript will reflect. So this does require some pre-planning, maybe a little bit of research online so that you can use something like Keywords Everywhere or the automatic Google drop-down to try to discover questions that people are typing in about your topic so that you can speak to them. But that goes back into creating good content. So if you're doing that, your transcript is really likely to already have key phrases, your listeners' questions, and your main keywords in it. So that is how you naturally infuse keywords into your transcript. Your transcripts matter because NPR found that podcast episodes with transcripts see a 23% increase in traffic compared to those without. So NPR is a massive news outlet. They're creating content multiple times a day, all day, every day. So if within their own body of work, they've been able to test podcast episodes with and without transcripts, and they're immediately seeing that podcast episodes with transcripts see 23% more traffic, I think we should take that as an action item. So if you want more listeners, more traffic, and better search rankings, adding transcripts is absolutely a no-brainer. All right, so let's get even more specific. I want to walk you through some advanced SEO strategies for financial professionals. Now that we've covered the fundamentals of podcast SEO, we talked through titles, show notes, and transcripts, it's time to level up. In this section of the episode, we're talking about advanced strategies that can drive even more listeners to your podcasts and ultimately convert them into clients. There are 3 high-impact strategies that financial professionals can use to grow their podcast audience organically. This is the key word. We're not talking about paid ads. We're not talking about splashy YouTube video ads. Organic keyword SEO ranking is what we're talking about here. So the 3 high-impact strategies are 1, a keyword strategy. 2, backlinking and cross-promotion. 3, repurposing content for YouTube and social media. So 1, the keyword strategy. This is where you consider I've touched on this before in this episode. What are your clients searching for? Or what does someone who should be your client search for? SEO is all about matching your content to what people need. The problem? Well, many financial professionals create content based on industry jargon rather than the everyday language their clients use, which makes it feel inaccessible, scary, and confusing. For example, your potential clients aren't typing in wealth management insights into Google. They're searching for, how much do I need to retire? Is a Roth IRA worth it for me? If I'm 40 years old, should I open a Roth IRA? And best tax strategies for small business owners making under $250,000. I hope you're able to see the difference between wealth management insights, because that is a very common phrase that I've seen in this financial space, versus these very specific questions that people want answers to. Now, according to a study by SEMrush, which is a search engine optimization platform, 92.4% of all keywords get 10 searches per month or fewer. So that doesn't sound like very much, right? Like 92% and 10 searches per month or less. So what this means, though, is that most people search for very specific, long phrases, and those are called long tail keywords. So they aren't searching for wealth management. They aren't searching for best money market account. They're searching for a long, very specific question that is just for their situation. So ditch all the broad terms and start getting ultra specific about your content and the questions that you're answering. Now, here's how to find the right keywords. I touched on this earlier, but here are some really specific action steps on how to search and find keywords that people are actually looking for. Now, when you type in your topic in Google, there is a people also ask section with questions where you can click like a little drop down arrow and see additional answers to additional questions. Those people also ask questions are indications that people are typing in those questions into Google. So if there's some way that you could work in those questions and those answers into your episode about the topic that you typed above, that would be a really naturally keyword rich and long tail keyword rich episode. So do that. All right, the second tip. I want you to check out answerthepublic.com. Answerthepublic.com is a free tool that reveals the most common questions people ask about a topic. I will warn you, SEO research, which is this Google people also ask section, Answer the Public, and this next one I'm going to tell you, it feels like a rabbit hole because it is. You can get lost for hours searching for the best phrasing, the most asked questions, the most detailed questions. Set yourself a timer, do some SEO research, and stop. At that point, you've done enough to create a great episode. If you've just taken, 15 to 30 minutes to gather these topics and the questions that people most ask about your episode topic, you're good. Answer those couple questions you came up with, move on. Any further information needs to be a different episode. All right, the third tip here is to actually look at your competitors' podcast episodes. See if you can find what topics they're covering and if those topics are ranking well. So especially if there is another advisor or money coach or CPA in the space that you admire and that maybe they have a larger following than you, check out what are they covering? Are they covering something differently than you would or more specific than you would? Those are clues that can lead you toward creating great content and getting like a little slice of that audience. Okay, so here's the action step. Before planning your next episode, take a few minutes. Like I said, set a desktop timer, 15 to 30 minutes most, and search for your topic in Google. Look at the exact words and phrases people are using and incorporate those keywords into your title and show notes. Okay, the second high impact strategy for financial professionals to grow their audience organically is backlinking and cross promotion. If you have no idea what I just said, that's okay. These two things are ways to ensure that you get more visibility. I'm going to explain each, so stick with me. If you want Google to rank your podcast higher, you need other websites linking to your episodes. These are called backlinks, and they're one of the biggest ranking factors in SEO. In other words, you need to get other people, other websites, especially larger platforms, to link to your content. A study by Ahrefs found that 91% of web pages get zero traffic from Google. Zero, y'all. And the biggest reason is a lack of backlinks. So if no one else is linking to your content, if no other site is pointing to you, you're basically irrelevant. Google thinks that you don't exist. So here's how to get more backlinks. I've got 3 tips here for you. Number 1, guest posts, quotes, and content for other people's websites. This could be where you write a short article for a finance publication. You can provide quotes and content to reporters so that they quote you in their articles and link back to your website. You can guest on someone else's podcast where they post a link back to your website. anything you can do to help get content on other people's platforms that will point back to your platform is going to create a backlink for you and boost the rankings of your site. Tip number 2, use financial forums and LinkedIn groups. Whether it's a Facebook group, a Reddit thread, a LinkedIn group, wherever you find community around your topic, find ways to share your episode or your content pieces inside there where these professionals are discussing related topics. Don't just drop a link to your episode every time a new one goes live. Pay attention to the conversation inside these groups and share your content as a contribution to the discussion. Dropping in a link is just like spam. Like nobody's going to click on it or read it. But if it's paired with a thoughtful angle on the topic being discussed, and oh, by the way, I have a podcast episode with all my thoughts on this, and you post that, you're going to get some fellow professionals in the space looking at your content, which is great. Number 3, collaborate with other podcasters. So I alluded to this in tip 1. When you appear as a guest on another podcast, most often they are going to provide links back to your website, your offer, your show, your freebie, whatever it is that you shared as a guest. The other thing you can do is, even if they were a guest on your show, sometimes they want to post the episode on their website or even run the episode on their podcast app as like a reverse interview. So say yes. All of these are great opportunities for those guests to have links pointing to your website. The result is your website, your show, your platform will be elevated in its SEO rankings. So my suggested action step here is to make a list of 3 finance blogs or industry sites where you could contribute an article or a quote and hopefully get featured in one of their publications. Reach out and offer to share your insights. And in that publication, link back to a podcast episode that provides value on that same topic. All right, advanced SEO strategy number 3, repurposing content for YouTube and social media. These days, most of us are looking at podcasting as very video first. So the repurposing to YouTube feels like we're creating something for YouTube, but we're repurposing it for a podcast. So depending on your workflow as you're creating content, you may have even greater opportunity to repurpose content to various other platforms. Now, SEO isn't just about Google. It's about all the platforms. Every platform has their own algorithms and search engine optimization opportunities. It's all about getting your content in front of more eyes. Repurposing your content using video and social media increases your visibility and helps your episodes rank in multiple places. This matters because YouTube is the second largest search engine in the world. Also because podcasts with video generate 27% more engagement than audio-only podcasts. And because short-form video like Instagram Reels, TikTok, and YouTube Shorts get twice as much engagement than static posts. So here's how to repurpose your podcast for maximum reach. 1, I think you probably know this, but short clips for Instagram Reels and TikTok. These are 60 to 90 second highlights from your episodes. You can clip them out using Riverside or Opus, or my team hand selects and hand edits portions from your already recorded content down to create a reel. So in most cases, it requires no additional work from you to create short clips. The other thing I'm seeing most often is to post the full video on YouTube. We're just dual posting at this point where we're creating video and audio. Audio goes on podcast platforms. Video goes on YouTube and Apple and Spotify. They actually have integrated video at this point. And we're just making sure that they have an SEO-friendly title and description. And the third way that you can repurpose your podcast for maximum reach is write a blog post from your transcript. You create a blog post covering the same topics that were in your episode, and boom, you have a blog post for your website. That appears to Google that you're creating even more content. So now you've got audio, video, a blog. Your audio and video have an SEO-friendly title. You've got detailed show notes or descriptions. You posted the transcript with it. And now you have this amazing blog post as well. So while on one hand, it does feel like more, this is how you are just simply repurposing content that you already created. You did the SEO research once. You sat down and recorded once. And then that information can be split off into all of these different arenas, linking to each other, which we already talked about backlinks, so that's good. Showing Google or any search engine that you are very active on your website. And in each piece of content, you have the opportunity for even better keywords, even stronger, more specific questions that your audience is looking for, and to catch even more potential eyes. Not everyone who hears your podcast is also going to watch the video. Not everyone who watches the video is also going to read the blog post. Blog post readers generally are not podcast listeners. So you're touching different audience segments that don't typically intersect. They're actually different audience buckets that receive and digest content in their own preferred way. So don't get overwhelmed right here. Companies like mine do this for our clients all the time. So again, it does not require additional work on your part. Or you have AI. You, I hope, have a VA. If not, listen to the prior episode and get you a VA through Camille. There are ways to repurpose your podcast, seem like you're everywhere all the time, reach these very specific audience groups that prefer to consume content a certain way, and to not really have to do more work. It is as easy as it sounds once you get it set up. So your action step this week is to pick one repurposing strategy to try. Whatever thing you think is going to be most impactful for your business and your show, select it and move forward with it. If you are DIYing your show and you don't want to learn how to edit video, or you don't have time to edit video, at the very minimum, start by adding your RSS feed to YouTube so that your full podcast audio is at least on YouTube, so that you're at least getting some content on that platform. And then double check that your title and your description are optimized with the keywords that we talked about earlier in the episode on YouTube. It's an easy way to double your reach with zero extra recording time. Okay, so this episode was packed with information. SEO is a really deep rabbit hole, and it's really hard to teach it, explain it, create value for you that is easy to understand and take action on without getting a little bit in the weeds. So we did. We covered a lot. As we close, let's break it down. I don't want you to try to implement everything at once. Even just doing one thing, like we talked about, pick one way to repurpose. Do 5 minutes even of SEO research before you start recording on your topic. Any of these little, seems like baby steps, will actually make a difference in your podcast's discoverability and growth. Now, here's a quick roadmap to get you started. Step 1, if you can't do anything else I said in this episode except optimize your next episode title, great. Just start there. Use clear, keyword-rich phrases instead of vague or catchy titles. Ask yourself, what would my ideal client type into Google to find this? If you have room for more, check out your show notes. Make sure that they have keyword-focused descriptions of your episode and that the information contained in your show notes is like a mini blog post that's useful and helpful and that answers common questions related to the topic. Because the number one thing that you want your show notes to do is provide value to the reader, whether that reader is a human or whether that reader is a search engine. Step 3, start using transcripts. Get an AI-generated transcript from one of the sites I mentioned, post them with your show notes. Most podcast host accounts have a transcript section where you can add that in when you post your episode. If you are manually posting your episodes on a website, I talked with you earlier in the episode about how to format that so it's not overwhelming and so that it still looks good, but you still get all of the words. All right, step 4, expand your reach by picking one of the advanced SEO strategies that I talked about to try this week, whether that's using Answer the Public for keyword ideas, securing a backlink from another website that can point back to your site, or repurposing your podcast into a YouTube video or an Instagram reel. Even small SEO improvements can have a giant impact over time. SEO is another one of these long games that we keep talking about on this show. Podcasting is not a short-term, blow up, I'm a millionaire tomorrow type of thing. Podcasting is a long-term game. SEO is too. There's a reason. All of these things take time. If you take away one thing from this episode, let it be this. SEO doesn't have to be complicated. We broke it down into very simple steps. Just do one of them. You do not need to be an SEO expert. Just make a small improvement, one episode at a time, with your episodes going forward. And remember, podcasting is one of the best tools for building authority and attracting clients, but only if people can actually find your show. So by taking a few simple steps to improve your discoverability, you're making sure your expertise reaches the people who need it most. Now, if all of this sounds great, but you're thinking, there's no way I have time to do this myself, that's exactly why I'm here. At Podcast Abundance, we help financial professionals and business owners grow their podcasts through our done-for-you services. Those done-for-you services include show notes packages where we write SEO-friendly, keyword-optimized descriptions that boost search rankings. We provide consulting and growth coaching, which includes tailored strategies just for your show to help you turn your podcast into a client attraction system. And we offer podcast editing and optimization so that you can focus on recording while we handle all of the post-production. If you want expert help optimizing your show and getting more listeners, check out podcastabundance.com or reach out to me on LinkedIn. We would love to help you grow. Thank you so much for tuning in to Reaching Abundance. I appreciate you, and I'll see you in the next episode. I'd love to hear which piece of this conversation meant the most to you today. Head to reachingabundance.com/convo. If you're ready to market your business effectively with a podcast, let's talk. Click the book a call link in the description and I'll take it from there. Thanks for listening to Reaching Abundance. I'm Virginia Elder and I'll be back next week with another insightful episode for you. Follow me on Instagram @podcastabundance to stay connected in the meantime.